the trade-off between unemployment rate and inflation rate in the short run. If you look at the meme on the right, it has a very good statement about the relationship between these two variables. If we look at the Phillips curve depicted on the left, we can see that there is an inverse indirect relationship between the rate of inflation and unemployment rate. This outlines the tough decisions governments have to make about their economy. They can either choose a high rate of inflation with a low unemployment rate, or a low rate of inflation with a high unemployment rate. However, you cannot have both a low rate of inflation and a low unemployment rate. Therefore, a trade-off is created between these two variables. Now, for shifting this Phillips curve, you can see a classic mistake made by economic students such as myself at first about the short run aggregate supply and the Phillips curve because they do not shift in the same direction. For example, when there was a variety of aggregate supply shocks, this led to stagflation, a term coined at the time to refer to a period of stagnation or recession with inflation and unemployment. The supply shock forces the short-run aggregate supply curve to shift to the left, thus increasing the price level and decreasing the real GDP, which leads to more unemployment. With these higher price levels and higher unemployment, the Phillips curve shifts outwards, so it is less extreme difference between these two trade-offs and variables. Now, a real-life example of the Phillips curve is detailed in an article by the Wall Street Journal. The federal government has to choose between job creation and a low inflation rate. The federal chairwoman has to attempt to find an inflation rate which achieves the lowest possible inflation rate and unemployment rate at the same time because the unemployment rate has been dropping since 2008 from about 6.6% to 5.6%, which has raised inflation rates, thus proving that the Phillips curve is accurate and has real-world application.
Some important background to answer this question is that the term natural rate of unemployment refers to the level of unemployment when the economy is at its full level of output, and that while wages and prices are inflexible in the short run, in the long run both wages and prices have sufficient time to adjust to aggregate demand. If aggregate demand shifts to the right and there is a resultant increase in price level, then workers will begin demanding higher wages in the time period known as the flexible wage period. If aggregate demand shifts to the left, then price level and output will decrease, causing wages to decrease. In both situations, firms will increase or decrease the quantity of workers to either obtain more labor at the same cost or avoid increasing the amount of capital they spend on labor. This change in employment level will cause an economy to return to its full employment level of output, thereby restoring unemployment to its natural rate. Therefore, while inflation may change after aggregate demand and short-run aggregate supply change, the natural rate of unemployment will remain constant, meaning that the Phillips curve is vertical at that point and there's no trade-off to be made between inflation and unemployment rate. As a real-life example, the president of the Boston Federal Reserve cautioned against adjustments to interest rates that would bring unemployment below its natural rate. This example demonstrates the long-term futility of changing unemployment, since there's no trade-off between the unemployment rate and the inflation rate in the long run. The relationship between economic output and the rate of unemployment can most clearly be seen by comparing a monetarist graph with a long-run Phillips curve. On a monetarist graph, the location of the vertical long-run aggregate supply line determines the economic potential output. And from our answer to the previous question, we know that the vertical long-run Phillips curve is located at the natural unemployment rate. When long-run aggregate supply shifts to the right, both production and employment increase. Since employment increases, the long-run Phillips curve shifts to the left because the unemployment rate has fallen. Since the economy always produces at full potential output in the long run, the new unemployment rate is also the new natural rate of employment.